Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I invite you just to come along and take a seat. There's a few kind of in the middle there and towards the back. Feel free to join us. My name's Tabitha Laverty. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I just gave myself a promotion. Sorry, Ruth. For the Accelerator Center. I don't know how Ruth will feel about that, but she'll forgive me, I'm sure. Thank you guys so much for joining us for She Talks Tech. We're happy to have you here this evening. Just a few things I'd like to chat about before we get started with tonight's very exciting panel. First of all, thank you for joining us. This is one of our favorite event series to put on because we get a chance to showcase the diversity of our community. If you spent any time with us at the AC or attended any other She Talks Tech events, creating an inclusive community is really important to us. We talk very often about how we welcome people who don't look like us, people who don't live like us, and today we're excited to talk about how do we include people who don't think like us. So we welcome you all here. We're glad to have your perspective. We're going to have an amazing panel. They're going to tell you their experience, and then we're saving lots of time at the end for you to ask questions, for you to share your own experience. Our hope here today is that you learn from each other and you teach us a little bit about how to include people like you in our organizations and in our workplaces. I'd like to really quickly thank our sponsors this evening. Thank you to Catalyst Commons for your continued support of the event. We always enjoy having events in this space. And also to the team from BMO Financial. Jacqueline's here somewhere. Jacqueline, wave. Right in the back. A really amazing supporter of all of our work at She Talks Tech as well. So with that, I will introduce you to Stephanie. Stephanie is one of our amazing alumni founders. She is the founder of a great company called AutoCate. I'll let her introduce herself to you while the panel joins us in their seats.
Thank you.
Actually, your mic.
Oh, right, I have a mic. This is new for me. Normally I have a prop, and I really enjoy that part. But thank you, and welcome to my panelists, which I will introduce. My name is Stephanie Brunsma. I am the CEO and founder of AutoCate. AutoCate stands for Auto and Educate, and we help car owners make confident car decisions. So when you go get your car fixed and you're wondering, are they upselling me? Are they telling me things I don't need? 30% of the time, yes, they are. Unfortunately, more so if you are a woman, which we're all like, yeah, that makes sense, right? AutoCate is on a mission to build that, prevent that, and I'm honored to be here with this amazing team tonight. Tonight's conversation is more than awareness. It's about lived experience, leadership, innovation, and what becomes possible when different ways of thinking are not just accommodated, but genuinely valued, pardon me. So tonight, I'm starting with Wanda. And give a little hand up so we know who's who. Wanda is the founder and principal of Liberty Co., a consultancy focused on increasing neurodiverse employment with a special emphasis on autism. What I appreciate about Wanda's work is that she brings both lived experience and systems-level thinking to this conversation. Following her own midlife autism diagnosis, she has become a powerful advocate for neuroinclusion, helping organizations move beyond surface-level awareness and toward real change. She brings the kind of perspective that helps people rethink not only inclusion, but leadership itself. Sarah Beth. Hey. Sarah Beth is an ADHD coach, community organizer, and former tech leader with more than 15 years of experience in Waterloo Region's tech sector. She also founded and leads Gender Equity Tech Waterloo Region and brings a deeply practical and human perspective to neurodivergence, work, and support. What stands out about Sarah Beth is that she always helps find clarity, self-understanding, and forward movement in environments that do not always fit the way their brains work. What I appreciate about Sarah Beth is that her work is deeply grounded in the realities, people are actually living, helping them move forward. Isabella. Hey. Isabella is a PhD student at the University of Waterloo whose research explores how technology and health systems can better support older autistic adults. She brings together research, innovation, and lived experience in a way that makes this conversation richer and more grounded. Isabella also brings attention to populations too often overlooked, and her perspective adds both depth and humanity to how we think about inclusion in tech. Last but not least, Jennifer. Jennifer is someone who knows what it means to build under pressure and still rise above expectations. She built and scaled a successful transportation and logistics company in a male-dominated industry, growing it from the ground up into a multi-million-dollar business before it was acquired. After that, she followed a bigger calling and founded Leadership Hub, where she now supports women entrepreneurs with leadership coaching and practical growth strategies. in many ways becoming the support she wishes she had while building her own business. Jennifer brings real resilience, real business experience, and deep commitment to helping women lead with more clarity, confidence, and courage. Like, come on, this... We brought a powerhouse to this conversation, right? Let's get into it. I'm so excited. So, let's get grounded first. Wanda, I think a really important place for us to start is with language, because these words get used a lot and not always precisely. Wanda, or myself too, can you please help ground us in the difference between neurodiversity and being neurodivergent, and why that distinction matters?
So neurodiversity is a term that was coined in the 1990s by Judy Singer from Australia. And it describes natural differences in human brain makeups. So it's as natural to have all kinds of differences in human brain makeups as it is in any other form of human diversity, whether it's racial diversity, ethnic diversity, religious diversity. We have that diversity, we have neurodiversity concept. Neurodivergent, people. I'm neurodivergent. We have a 100% neurodivergent panel, starting with Sarah Beth, coming right down here to Jen. Yay. 100% neurodivergent panel. This does not happen often enough, so yay, Accelerator Center. So we're the people behind the concept. And so it is really important, Steph. You know why? Because concept broad. Neurodivergent people. People relate to people. People relate to stories about people. So neurodivergence, if I could just add one more, are the conditions. So I'm autistic. You're going to hear more about ADHD. So the neurodivergent people have neurodivergence, and the concept is neurodiversity. An individual, though, is not neurodiverse. A group of people is neurodiverse. So if you're going to say Wanda's neurodivergent, yeah, say that. Don't say Wanda's neurodiverse. It's a group of people who are neurodiverse, and it's that mix of all those wonderful human brain makeups.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, for setting the foundation and giving so many examples for our neurodivergents who are like, yes, understand exactly. Amazing. My next question is for Isabella. Building on what Wanda said, when you hear the phrase, the neurodiverse advantage, what does that mean to you and your own work or life?
So just simply, I think it was already brought up, the different ways of thinking. So that includes neurodivergent people, but it also includes neurotypical people working together and building strengths that match. So in itself, neurodivergence isn't anything, it's not a gift, it's not anything different than neurotypical. But what's the problem is that there's always been so much lack of representation with neurodiversity and neurodivergence that we have been undermined, undershadowed. So the strengths that we bring into the table of a neurodiverse workspace or academic space, those strengths have been lessened or maybe taken over by neurotypical people. So I think what really is the neurodiverse advantage is bringing up everyone's lived experience and everyone's different methods of thinking, everyone's different strategies, everyone's different strengths, and then supporting the different challenges everyone might have, so including neurotypical and neurodiverse people. Sorry, neurodivergent people. So
It's okay, right? It's a mouth. We're
Yeah.
getting excellent. I'd like to invite Jennifer to answer the same question. Let me know if you need me to repeat it.
Yeah, if you can do that.
Happily. Are we?
Oh, yes, it is. Oh, hello, thank you.
Amazing. So building on what Wanda said and defined for us, when you hear the phrase, the neurodiverse advantage, what does that mean to you in your own work or life?
Yeah, so for me, it was, first let me put the foundation of, I had my head stuck in the sand for almost 13 years owning a transport business. And I was diagnosed as ADHD when I was 6. And I never read about it. My parents were very, just pretty much wanted me to just live how I lived and pretty much gave me the tools at a young age to, as silly as it sounds, pretty much say to me, you have to remember how awesome you are. So as I went into my career, there was a lot of pushback I got with that because of just how my brain worked. I actually never read about ADHD until this year. So it was really a struggle in my career, but from other people, but not actually doing my job. I actually excelled at transportation because it was really complicated. But the way my brain works is I like little wins very quickly. So the way I did it is I just created little wins for myself, and not being able to succeed wasn't an option. So if I didn't like something, I just changed it. So my advantage was, you know, when I had people say, well, I don't want to work with you because you get a lot of things done, my answer was like, okay, I'll just take your job. And I did, right? So that's how I dealt with it. But because of that, I didn't get along with people very well. But because of the way I was brought up, I really loved me, so it didn't matter. So I would say the advantage of that is I was always in my head that I didn't have time to care about what people thought about me. And because I liked quick wins, I created tools in my toolbox that when I had my own transport company, because there's a lot of, it's very complex, transport, warehousing, 3PL, that it came easy to me because my brain works at a really fast pace. So that was my advantage of, people were trying to figure it out, and I'm like, guys, let's just do this, man. Let's just do this. So, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Sarah Beth, same question.
So I am endlessly fascinated by how different people think. So listening to that, I'm riveted. Your brain works that way. Some of my best work was in rooms with people where we thought completely different. I brought the human perspective. How does this impact our users? Whose workflow is this going to screw up down the line, for a process that we're changing? Other people brought the data perspective. How do we structure this data so that we don't screw up a system down the line, or so that we can capture what we don't even know we need yet. Being in those rooms where we were invited to think differently, and whether it was from that neurodivergent, wiring that brought those talents, those skills, or other forms of diversity, right? Other forms of lived experience, being in rooms where people are invited to bring their whole self, their whole way of thinking, that's where the creativity flowed. That's where we got excited and built cool things. So the Neurodiverse Advantage is the advantage of making it safe to bring folks together and have this wealth of, contact with each other's ideas and seeing what that brings.
Amazing. I love how every time each one of you talks, the energy builds. This is great. Wanda, same question.
So thinking about that, the neurodiverse advantage, I'm thinking competitive advantage. So yes, back to what Isabella said right at the beginning, thinking differently, thinking in innovative ways. We definitely need that. We've always needed it, but I would say we need it now more than ever when you think about our world and the huge problems. And then if you boil it right down on the workplace, examples that Sarah Beth already mentioned, applying differences in thinking, whether it's, for more successful processes, simpler processes. I guess the thing though is that, so there's a lot of good, there's a lot of benefit, but we need to be able to belong in our workplaces. We need to be able to have that culture of belonging. We need to feel safe to bring forward these great differences that can really improve. But if we're so down on ourselves because of misunderstandings and because we don't fit in, then we're not going to be able to play to our full talents, just like we want everyone to. Often we see our neurotypical peers being able to do that. We want to be able to do that too. So yeah, definitely the advantage. It's just, how can we move the needle? But I know, Steph, that's your job. You're going to take us down a lot more questions to get there.
Yeah, that's good. But I like that grounding in safety and creating that space to really have those neurodivergent people flourish. I really like how you brought us there. Jennifer, I'm excited. I'm really excited. I've heard you talk about this before, and it's going to story time. Tell me about a time in your career when the neurodivergence felt like a strength rather than a challenge. What made that possible?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to, because what I've found with the ADHD and this community is you do feel kind of beat up a lot. So I say my advantage was, you're never going to meet anybody that has more confidence than me. So I'm very confident. And what was the question again?
It's okay. I love repeating it. I've been practicing. Thank you. Tell me about a time in your career when your neurodivergence felt like a strength rather than a challenge, and what made it possible.
Yeah, so because I was brought up with a lot of confidence, I always, the way that my mind works is I was always doing things that really succeeded. And, you know, in the workplace, everybody's been in a workplace where it's about getting along, right? I never did, and I was okay with that because I was really good at what I did. And I know I said that before. And so what kind of set me apart was I didn't really focus. I was only focused at the task at hand, and that's what my advantage was. And I already forgot the question again. I don't know why I'm forgetting the questions, but...
You're answering. You maybe keep forgetting, but you're still answering.
I know, like... Can you give it to me in a short form real quick? Like a story, the time?
Putting me on the spot, that's fine. Yeah. A strength rather than a challenge, and what made it possible?
Yeah, every day. Yeah, I'm because of the way my mind worked in transportation, I was really good at it. So things that were complex for people were not complex for me. So that was really my advantage, right? So, you know, I went on mat leave and I came back to the same meeting that they were doing 9 months ago. And I was like, why are you guys still sitting here doing this? Like my company's name was Simplify because I simplified stuff, right? So that was my advantage. And I didn't have time or my brain didn't focus on that, like, you know, oh, let's get along, let's fit in. It was like, did you just do your task? Because I just want to do my task, right? And that was one of the reasons why I started my own business in transportation, because I came back to a meeting that we'd had 9 months before, right? And so, yeah, like that's really the way my brain works, and just getting stuff done and not really having the time to remember somebody was mean to me. That was my advantage. And and the thing was I wanted to get it done. So not just talk about it, but just kind of like execute it. And if something didn't work, like, yes, obviously you have to put plans and processes and all that stuff in place, but at the end of the day, you need to execute. Because if you don't execute it, you can think about it all day long. You need to kind of do the trial and error to make it work. And I've been in transport. I was in transport for 20 years. And, you know, now going into kind of consulting, it doesn't matter what business you're in, right? So that was kind of always my advantage, just getting it done and getting it done well. Let me just finish that, so, yeah.
No, I love that, especially, you know, because so many ADHDers, right, they get labeled with, oh, you're procrastinating.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, but what seems like the way you've overcome that is action. Action leads to action leads to action, instead of, you know, getting stuck on that task paralysis sort of thing.
Well, I set timers for myself too, right? And we'll talk about kind of tools and toolboxes, but yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, same question, I'm gonna repeat it.
Sorry.
Because I can. Tell me about a time in your career that your neurodivergence felt like a strength rather than a challenge, and what made that possible. That's for you, Sarah Beth.
Okay, first, another definition. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So I have ADHD. It is poorly named. It is not a deficit of attention. Yes, we're nodding, like we all know this. It's not a deficit of attention, it's a deficit of regulation. So my brain is taking it all in. I am pulling in data points, even if whether I realize it or not. And so when you, like with Jen, when you throw me at a complex problem, I've read the body language in the room, I've listened to the words in the room, I've connected the dots to 4 different conversations I had with people who aren't in the room, and then I'm able to summarize and go into action mode and bring people into the conversation to say, okay, I know you have this skill, what do you think about this problem? So the benefit for me is having that not deficit of attention, that plethora of attention, and then being able to figure out how I can activate turning it into action. Now, there's always a cost, right? This constant attention, constant input can be exhausting, right? Folks with ADHD and neurodivergent folks burn out, right? Because our environments aren't set up to support the way our nervous systems work. But if we can craft the way we work and, figure out the systems and the supports we need, brilliant things can happen.
Excellent, thank you. In a room with women ready to make things happen, so this is great. Isabella, same question to you.
Yeah. Thank you. So I thought about research. So for me, I work best when I'm very interested and passionate about the topic. So I went into research so that I can explore my topics. I can explore the problems that I deem as essential, and I think others would also agree that they're essential topics. But just practically, the way that research works is it allowed me to be really flexible in what I wanted to do. It allowed me to explore problems that I really wanted to explore and look at methodological aspects of these problems. So my neurodivergence in academia, I honestly think is the biggest advantage because I can stay passionate about something that might take years just to answer one question, right? I just keep going because I find more and more interesting things within this one topic. So this particular is autism and aging. And I just keep going and going and going because I'm just so interested and passionate about it. I also can see patterns that aren't apparent right away, and I'm very good at both zooming into the details, but also seeing how those details make up in a bigger system. So, I mean, that's a lot of hype for myself, I gotta say, but at the end of the day, I think that those are all huge advantages. And I think that would also apply to other areas of non-research. But for me, my experience, research and academia has really allowed me just to flourish in that way. So, yeah.
Amazing. You said patterns and passion, and I love alliteration, and I was like, this is great. I'm going to leave that with, my neurodivergent friends. They're my patterns and passion people. Thank you so much for that label as well. Moving on, let's get to you, Sarah Beth. Many people are diagnosed later in life, or they self-identify. How has your understanding of yourself evolved over time, and how has that impacted your work? And, if relevant, it's a long question, you're welcome to speak to labels and how they have or have not helped.
Okay. So I am the classic example of a late diagnosed woman. I was the keener in school. I got good grades. I joined all the clubs, and I sobbed in my house on Sunday nights because I was so overwhelmed. I did really well in university until stuff, the wheels fell off, and I had to kind of rebuild systems to keep going. I did not have that label, all through my youth, all through, my early career. Then I had kids, and then I noticed that one of my kids, there were some signs. So I put my kid through an assessment. This was a family conversation. They were very interested in it. And when we went to the assessment meeting, following all the testing, and they read the report, they told me my life story. They told me, who I was at the same time as telling me who my kid was, or not who they were. Actually, I want to walk that back, about how their brain works, interesting things that we can start looking for in how they approach the world. It's not who they are, right? It's not who I am. It's just a part of me. And so once my kid got diagnosed, then I was like, should I maybe look into this? And I waited, and I decided to go to extra coach training to do ADHD coaching, because guess what? A bunch of my clients already self-identified with having ADHD. I have a kid with ADHD, more learning. Still didn't have a diagnosis. But then, puzzle pieces kept falling into place about, I've seen this behavior in me, and that tool works really well for me. There's a blog post on my website where I talk about the power of body doubling, and even though I don't have ADHD, it works so well for me. So getting the label just helps me, quite honestly, not feel like an imposter when I use these tools. I actually get to own the fact that I get to use these tools. I now get to be really curious and, learn as my kid is learning how their brain works, get to be curious about how that might work for me or how things work for my clients. So it is very reinforcing. It's also really cool to be able to learn this alongside of my kid, right? Both of us get to learn this together, and they get to be in a household where it's like, yeah, this is a cool thing about you that we're going to support and accommodate and, make space for and have this be the norm for you. How cool would that have been to have that growing up? And so the label for me, I'm in the honeymoon period. I will admit it. I'm in that honeymoon period where I'm like, yes, I'm this, cool new thing. You're this, I have this cool new tool. And that might change over time, right? Stuff's still going to be hard, even though I have a label for it. And, I'm still going to run into stuff that doesn't stop being hard. But at least I have a bit of an owner's manual now to start, poking away and seeing what works. So, yeah.
I didn't plant the owner's manual pun, but she nailed it. Thank you. Same question to you, Wanda.
So a number of similarities with Sarah Beth. So I received my diagnosis a month before my 47th birthday, so I was a little older. And our older son, my husband, is here. So our older son had been diagnosed, and then a number of years later, we noticed our younger son was indeed struggling, and he received a diagnosis. And I was in the same practice because of anxiety I was experiencing, especially because of interpersonal relations at work. So I was in the same practice that our younger son was in. He received his own diagnosis of autism. And as soon as he received it, I said to my family physician, I want my own psychological assessment. I think I'm autistic too. And she said, okay, fine. I was so lucky. And so because I was in the same practice as my son, that diagnosis was able to happen quite quickly. So we were all very fortunate. And I call it, Steph, living life as real Wanda. I named my firm Liberty Co. Because confronting the facts brings us freedom. And I really can't describe how liberating it is. I blamed myself for all these misunderstandings. I lived in a duality. I always say it was a split screen. It would have been easier if it was one screen. It was two screens. Good and bad, outward and inward. And I was in therapy in 2017 again because I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope anymore at midlife, so many changes, so much upheaval, and I had a complete breakdown. And then, as I say, our younger son received his diagnosis, and I got mine too. So now my life and life as real Wanda has become my work through Liberty Co. and working with organizations to help them understand the opportunities around neuro-inclusion. So it's really like everything has coalesced and become one in a much more positive way. But as Sarah Beth has spoken to, I'm not naive. I say I'm going to be on this journey of self-awareness for the rest of my life. You can't have that kind of new prism thrown on you at 47 and think, oh, it's all just going to become clear and, by the time I'm 50. No, I'm going to be evolving and understanding for the rest of my life. I realize that, but it's so much better than it was.
Love that. Rwanda, right? Man, that word says so much, even in one word. And I love how you brought that together. Thank you for sharing. Same question, Jennifer.
I do not remember the question. Just, if you come to me, just repeat the question.
I was going to. How many, not how many, just to trip you up. I'm just kidding. Okay. Many people are diagnosed later in life or they self-identify. How has your understanding of yourself evolved over time, and how has that impacted your work? And if relevant, you're welcome to speak to labels and how they may have helped or not.
Yeah, so like I said, I got diagnosed when I was 6. My parents with ADHD. My parents, my dad who is a Russian engineer, and my mom who was Trinidadian, so Caribbean, full of life. So my dad's solution to the way my brain worked, because he couldn't understand it, was to get me into competitive shooting and motorcycles. Yeah, he's like, here, you, 6, gun, here, yes. And I have a love of motorcycles that I have forever. So the reason he did that was because I was always kind of like running around like, bah! And I'm almost happy that they didn't bring me up thinking I knew I was different. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was kind of different because you're awesome. So my dad, if I messed up or acted up at school, he would take apart, I got my dirt bike at 6, he would take apart my dirt bike and I have to put it back together. And back in the day, the Yamaha dirt bikes, like the manual was like this thick and it was like Bible paper. And I put it together like one time and I never acted up again. Or I wouldn't be able to ride my motorcycle or whatever, right? And even when I was 16 and I got a street bike, I wanted a 250 Honda, and my dad was like, no, you're getting a 1000cc V-twin engine because I know you can. So that's how I was brought up, right? And if anybody knows motorcycles, you know engines, V-twin is very torquey, it's very difficult to ride. But my parents were never like, you can't do something. It was like, you can and you need to own it. And so for me, I never, like I said, this year was the first time that I really read about ADHD and all these different things, because like this year I was like, you know what? Because I actually have to interact with people more. I only work with women now because I worked with men before. Is I would just simply say, like, so I'm probably gonna cut you off. I don't mean to, but I'm going to. And I remember I had to get a new doctor and she was like, oh, you have ADHD? And I was like, yeah, but how'd you know that? And she's like, well, you cut people off because you pretty much know what they're going to say. And I'm like, yes, I do. Oh, my goodness. You understand me. And so I kind of started reading about it. And for me, it almost was like there was a lot of negativity. And it made me sad because I always was like, my brain was my superpower. And the first time I actually talked about having ADHD was this year. I just kind of briefly just said it, but it was something that I never really told people I had. But then when I realized, when I look back about like what I've built, I simply just say it's because I have ADHD. I never saw it as a disadvantage. With the exception, like I said, with the exception of like, people don't understand you, right? And I don't have time for people to understand me. I love me. Right? And so because of the way that my parents brought me up, I remember when I was like 25 or something, and I had a boss and he was a meanie to me. And I remember saying to my dad, like, he's so mean. I'm doing such a good job and he's mean. This sucks. And my dad just looked at me and he goes, well, do you think this guy can like ride a motorcycle like you? Because I used to race bikes. And I would say, well, no. And he'd go, well, do you think he can peg off it's a orange thing. Do you think he could peg off one of those from 50 feet? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, then who cares about him? Who cares what he thinks about you? You're better than him in every way. And I'm not saying that's the right way for everybody, but that's how I was brought up. And now that I have a son who has ADHD and is dyslexic, I literally tell him, your brain is your superpower. And he's literally now, because he's been diagnosed with it, he's like, because we knew from when he was like 4, but he literally will say like, my brain is my superpower. So the only thing I would say is, I think, yes, there's a lot of research around it and everybody's different and everybody, you know what I mean? But I think we need to look at what makes us different, because, I mean, being the same sucks. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, take the brain part out of it. I mean, look at me. I don't look like anybody in here, okay? So I'm used to that part. So the fact that my brain is different too, I think is pretty awesome. So I hope that's aligned with what the question was.
I love it, and I've been given a warning, so we're going to keep going, keep rolling here, because we've got some really great content. My next question, Wanda, okay? What does meaningful inclusion actually look like in practice, beyond policies or performative efforts? And for the leaders and founders in the room, what is one concrete change that they can make tomorrow to better support neurodivergent team members?
So beyond policies and performance, I say is the simplest but the most important thing for leaders and all in the workplace: suspend your judgment. If someone's different, they're interacting differently, they're communicating differently, they're coming across differently, stop your judgment, pause, understand, come to a place of understanding and acceptance. Wanda, tell me more. Why do you feel that way? That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Why do you think that is? If the leader modeled that behavior consistently, others would follow. And something everyone can do, universal design. So before you say, Wanda, that's too phrasey for me and too much, think of a ramp designed for wheelchairs. Who's walked up a ramp? Who's pushed their baby carriage? Grocery cart? Delivery? Okay, you get, so design for special considerations at the beginning, and you'll make it better for everyone. So go back to your workplace, go back to your environment. When you're designing documents, considering your environment, consider neurodivergence, advance notice for change, brevity, succinct documents. Consider these things, and you will make it better for everyone. So many considerations were brought in place for the workplace for COVID. We had been lobbying for them for years. We were denied. They were brought in for COVID. Then everyone's saying, oh, I like these things. Oh my goodness, there's all these technological applications, hybrid, flexibility. Steph, we had been asking for them for years. No, we couldn't have them. So those are some things from higher level to day-to-day application that everyone can think about.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're so right about those circumstances in COVID when we finally realized we need change and taking advantage of them. Same question, Jennifer. What does meaningful inclusion actually look like in practice beyond policies or performative efforts? And for the leaders and founders in the room, what is one concrete change they can make tomorrow to better support neurodivergent team members?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the leaders, it's tough. Like, at the end of the day, processes and policy is just to make sure you don't get sued. Let's call a spade, right? I think you can just, if somebody is quote unquote different, then look at their skills, right? Look at their skills. Not everybody fits in a box. I don't even know where this box came from, but I digress. But look at how you can help the environment for the people, your team members, to succeed. And I think for the people that, I can only speak to ADHD, you have to put steps in yourself. I cannot stress that enough. Like yesterday I had, because I was coming to this, I'm like, you know what, let me try not to have my little alarms and timers. I went into my kitchen to get a glass of water. I made a banana chocolate loaf. When I went to go get a glass of water, it was an hour later, I went back to my office and I realized I didn't get my glass of water. So it sounds funny, but because I just didn't put my alarms on. So you have to find tools in your toolbox, because at the end of the day, the world is not going to conform to you. You have to create the world around you for you to really be happy. So whatever the tools are, if it's an alarm, if it's a notebook, if it's whatever it is, I will say really quickly, sorry, I know I'm going on. But one thing I have to say is the confidence piece too.
Thank you.
Look at the fact that you're amazing. That you're amazing. I don't want to be like everybody. Look at the fact that you're amazing and focus on that, and look at your skill set and just recognize, I know people are going to hate that I'm going to say this, but why you're a little bit better than others. Because it's pretty cool. So that's my advice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I like the forget the box.
Yeah. Who made this box?
Right? Isabella, looking ahead, what would a truly neuro-inclusive tech ecosystem look like, and what role can each of us play in building it?
So I don't mean to be the naysayer, but I am going to go back a little bit. For me, advocacy is very hard. Identifying with all these labels is very hard. And just being able to do my work the way I do best is also very hard. Partly just because of how the world is made up, how academia is made up, working with other people. So I think to make it truly inclusive, or truly the neurodiverse advantage, we do have to go back and see why people have had such a hard time, right? So why might a person not be able to advocate for themselves? There's a lot of reasons for that, right? A person might not understand all the tools that they could use, right? So maybe even supporting a person to find those tools. I don't know what that might look like, but that might be like connecting them with, a coach, right? So it's a whole bunch of things. I think recognizing that is really a good first step. And then I think it goes back to the judgment piece as well that Wanda was saying, that don't be quick to judge what's going on. I've talked to quite a few autistic people who have said that, hey, I really enjoyed the work, but there's one thing kind of threw me off, and I wasn't able to get back on my track to do well, right? So it might be something as simple as putting them back on the track and having a conversation of why. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end. So.
Thank you so much, Isabella. Same question to you, Sarah Beth. Looking ahead, what would a truly neuro-inclusive tech ecosystem look like, and what role can each of us play in building it?
So I want to see us get as excited and move as fast about making workplaces that include everybody as we are about adding AI to things, or as we were about going to cloud years ago, or as we were about whatever, insert technology shift. So we can start this tomorrow. So I'm going to also answer the what can we do tomorrow question. We can start this tomorrow building on what everybody said. Ask the question, like explicitly and on an ongoing basis, how do you work best? What do you need to succeed? If we, as leaders, if we ask this question on an ongoing basis so that people on your team expect it and they see you not just doing a one and done, not just doing a workshop to make things, neuro-friendly and then forgetting that workshop happened by the time the next workshop comes around, on an ongoing basis. So what you're doing by doing that is, first, you're getting the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, can we dim the lights? Can I need to work in a meeting room in the afternoons if I feel overstimulated. I need to, insert tiny solution here. And you're going to get those. But people aren't going to give you the bigger stuff until they feel like you're actually going to do something with it. So you got to ask over and over and over. If I have to create the lever in order to be able to pull the lever, if I have to book a meeting with you to ask if I can have this accommodation, accommodation is a 4-letter word for people because oftentimes you don't get them, and then you feel like an ass, pardon my language, but like for asking for it, because you're like, how dare I, have faith that somebody's going to do this for me? So ask it over and over and over. And then you're going to get the people who are like, hey, I need a little extra help to break down my tasks and figure out what the first thing I should work on is. That might be your neurodivergent staff member. That might be your staff member whose perimenopause is kicking their butt right now. That might be someone who is going through something that they're not taking to work with them by telling you about it, but they are taking it to work with them by how they show up and perform. And you as the manager, this is easier on you. As a leader, if you're asking the question and getting the data to act on, and even getting those solutions handed to you, you're no longer like questioning what the heck is going on with my team, why is morale going down? You're not asking those questions, you're asking the direct question that's going to get you the answer and the action.
Amazing. Thank you. I love that. Ready to go. 1 minute. Lightning round. So this is to all panelists, so first come, man. Jump in there, okay? To close, what advice would you give to someone who is neurodivergent and early in their career in tech or entrepreneurship?
Believe in yourself. I didn't believe in myself. Believe in yourself and find one person who believes in you. And a lot of us in this room probably have more than one that we could go to. Great, have one. And it's that person that you go to when the doubt sets in, and it will. They'll say, you can do this. And the other thing is, and this is connected, pull in resources. For some reason, people still think pulling in resources often is a weakness. No, it's the opposite. The ability to pull in resources at all different levels, in all different ways, that's a huge strength. And I'd love to see us change the conversation on that and really normalize. And so as folks are moving forward in tech, entrepreneurship, considering evolving, pull in resources, and a lot of them are becoming more accessible.
Excellent. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, I'm going to build on that. So don't just find one person, find your people. And your people are different, your people, depending on what you need in a given season of life or in a given type of space. Go to rooms where you can be your whole self. So I built gender equity tech so that people can show up into a space where they don't feel like they have to perform like woman or gender diverse person who belongs in tech. They don't have to perform that there. They do belong, and they belong in that room with other people who also belong. So find your spaces and don't worry about trying to get into rooms where people don't want you there because they don't deserve you. So find your people and a variety of people, and it'll change over time because your needs will change. What you're excited about will change. Your logistics will change, but find your people.
I would call myself early in my career, but I like to think back at my teenage self or my little kid self and just really fight to be able to go in those spaces, because I think we're still far away, but fight into those spaces that you're passionate in, because if you're passionate in it, you will make a difference. So that's where I'm at.
I can only speak to entrepreneurship. Just get it done. It really is, I don't care what neurodivergent you are, what normal, whatever you are. I can only speak to entrepreneurship. If you want to get things done, you want to build a career, you want to do awesome, get a to-do list, write something down every day, and get that task done. I have a to-do list that is never complete, but I get it done, at least one, because I focus on things too much, but get it done. And what I would say to you is have small wins. If you have ADHD with me, I like to have small wins, right? So put those in the beginning of your day. Take breaks, set alarms. I set alarms for myself to go take a walk, have some banana loaf. But take a break. And more importantly, I cannot stress this enough, especially in entrepreneurship, it's tough. You think working in a business is tough? Wait till you own the business. It's tough. You have to believe in yourself. I don't care if you have to talk to yourself in the mirror and tell you love yourself. Find something about yourself once a week that you really, really like. Focus on that. Do a to-do list and just get it done. And it's amazing what will happen when you do this over and over again.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank all of you for all of these great nuggets. And I'd like to open it up to the floor for questions at this point. I've definitely got more that I can ask, but you've given us so much richness, and I'd like to invite the audience to participate and get in there and get some questions answered from our experts. Go ahead. Yep. There's a cool cube they're throwing around. You won't get judged a lot.
Does it work?
Yeah, hey.
Question for Jennifer. You invested in confidence. So then do you have any systems to regulate between arrogance and humility? Like stay hungry, be humble, but sometimes the overconfidence turns into arrogance?
Well, I think so I've heard that a lot, and I think the difference between arrogance and confidence is I know I get it done. I don't talk, you're just hearing my voice. And I think when we talk about confidence, I think we need to look at so I always talk about when it comes to confidence, you need to love yourself, because everybody and their brother is not going to have the confidence that you have. So their first reaction is, why is that person so confident? Why do they? But all it is, it's a reflection. Right? They can understand why you have confidence, so they think it is arrogance, right? And I always say I'm the person that should have never succeeded in business, but I did, because I remember a conversation, somebody said, you think you're better than me? And I said, no, you think I'm better than you. I think we're all equal, so I think you need to work on that.
Okay.
So that's the difference.
Okay.
And I think be proud of what makes you confident. If you're good at something, like I know transport like the back of my hand, I am going to say that over and over again. And if I'm wrong and I mess up on something, that's okay. But I keep up to date and all that stuff. So if you're going to have confidence, you got to back it up. That's the key for me.
Okay. And then just follow up. You have a productivity system that you've described a bit. Can you describe it some more in depth?
Yeah, so I set a timer. So I have a to-do list every morning, and I set timers for myself. So like I work with, I'm a consultant now because I don't know how to relax. So I take my clients and I'll break my days in half, and then I'll have a to-do list for myself, but then I'll have an alarm every hour to just remind me to then move into the next task, because I hyper-focus. So that's how I do. So it's alarms, and When I feel like I'm getting bored, like when I start kind of getting up, then I'm like, oh, what's a quick win, right? Oh, let me send an e-blast out. Let me put myself on Instagram. I don't know. But yeah, so just alarms and to-do lists. And make sure you're checking off your to-do list to give yourself a pat on the back.
Right. Time boxing, quick wins, and to-do lists. Okay.
Would you recommend then having like a list of quick wins?
Pardon?
Would you recommend then having like a list of quick wins?
I don't write my list for quick wins. I just more if I feel like I'm getting bored and I just need or sometimes I just get up and I take a bike ride, right? And I take myself out of it. Now I understand I have the luxury to kind of do that. But whatever the quick win is for you, it doesn't mean to be your quick win in business. It could be I washed my toilet. I don't know. But just something that makes you happy, or I made my bed, or you know what I mean?
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions?
Sure.
Right over here. Yeah.
Hello. So for a lot of the late bloomers, not late bloomers, but late identification, apologies, what were some of the ways that you learned how to identify those needs that you had that were maybe cropping up in some unhelpful ways when you were first diagnosed?
So yeah, we're not late bloomers. We just didn't have the little label for what kind of flower we were yet. So I have the luxury of being a coach and being able to study this. Like, this is my hyper focus. So it's been really cool to learn things about how my brain works and then be able to look back and be like, oh, that's why that happened. And now I know how to hopefully not let that happen again, like for things that went wrong or for things that have been strengths for me. I now know how to like activate that strength more. So you're talking about quick wins and being, time boxed. And for me, it's usually external accountability. So I love being able to report to like my team or my client or my whoever that I did the thing. And it's not a big performative whatever. It's just that's how I check things off my list, is that external accountability. So I have body doubling partners. I work at a co-working space called Builders Club. I get to turn around and talk about the cool things I'm doing. Those are the things I'm learning as I go and able to then apply and activate.
Can I also speak? I know that I'm younger, I guess, and I identify, but I still went through the majority of my schooling without having a label. And it really feels a lot of times that neurodivergence is not a strength. You have to fight to rethink of your mind. So like the times that you're challenged, maybe think of it as a small win, like Jennifer was saying, what can I do to like hype myself up, right? Like if you're challenged with time management, maybe that's because you're doing some really awesome work on whatever you're doing right now, right? Maybe the house is super clean. Maybe you didn't like start your paper that you have to write, but your house is clean, that's a win. So like there's small things like that. I also really struggle with finding strength in my neurodivergence. It's just something that I have to work on. So I think it's a life process, and celebrate the little wins. I really like that, so maybe that helps.
So something that was really helpful to me, and in fact life-altering, was depersonalizing. So because of my differences and because of all the misunderstandings and I didn't know myself, I personalized everything. Anyone did, anything anyone said, it was about me. I just wanted to stop. Stop, it's not about you. So everything, I just, immediate reaction, depersonalize, and it's amazing what a change that has made in my life. But Steph, because Isabella said that, I just feel I need to counter. Because Isabella said, she's still finding her strengths as an autistic person. So autism has been researched by non-autistic people. In fact, neurodivergence, as a whole, has been researched by neurotypicals. Isabella's changing this. Yeah. So I met Isabella because I'm on a research advisory group for research study about autistic women and their experiences in the workplace. And generally, these topics are researched by neurotypicals. And it's somewhere between frustrating and demoralizing. And then comes Isabella.
Okay.
And so having Isabella's is so important. It's really revolutionizing the research. So yeah, there you go. You're not sure about your strengths as an autistic person. I had to throw that in.
Thank you.
No, I love it. Bringing in your hype people, right?
Yeah.
No, and I really appreciate that because that is not something I'd thought of or been brought to my forefront before. So I really appreciate that perspective. Thank you, Wanda. Is there any other questions? Yeah.
Second one thrown at me. Hi. So I really appreciate all the insight that you've brought. Thank you so much. I feel like it's been very focused on like productivity and success, and I would like to hear about maybe things that you've noticed and appreciate about yourself that's not related to productivity.
Okay, I don't know if this answers the question, but I do want to share like a happy story. So the day I got my diagnosis, I was taking care of my friend's kid who is neurodivergent, and I went to pick up my daughter from school who's neurodivergent, and in the car, my friend's kid said, since we're all neurodivergent, we're going to understand this, and then went into telling her story. And so being able to be in rooms and on panels like this, where you get to be like, my brain is actually tingling right now from that, like just being in a place where you are fully you and other people are there for that full you, that's pretty cool. And like now that I can say that I have ADHD and start making those connections with other people who do, and it's pretty cool. And Wanda, you mentioned liberation and all that good stuff. Like, yeah, that's what it can feel like. So yeah, it doesn't have to be productivity focused. It can just be joy focused. It can just be, hey, I have a connection with someone maybe we wouldn't have, had a reason to connect before. So it can just be joy.
And if I could answer that as well, I feel like it's, for me, like I love being in my helmet, right, with motorcycles, and just sheer happiness and being the ability to be in the moment makes me really happy. Like I can't tell you how many times I've happy cried in my helmet because I'm so happy, and I'm so, because of the way my brain works, and I listen to music blaring in my headphones, because trust me, nobody's gonna honk if they're gonna hit you on a bike. But I really am in the moment, and I'm just so happy. And I realize that I'm so happy, one, because I'm doing something that I love, but it's almost like I can feel the wind, the power, and, going back to the confidence thing, like I don't know, everybody must have something in here, and I hope they do, that they love so much. For me, it's motorcycles. Sorry to my kids, they're all older, they get it. But really and truly, just being able to be at one with the machine, being in the moment, and not being, I can only speak, not being Jen transport, Jen this, Jen blah, 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 blah. It's just really fun to be me. Like I was seeing if I could put tassels on my motorcycle thing, like, when we did back in the day when we were kids, because that's what it's like, just being happy and in the moment. So it's not about productivity and stuff like that, but I love the fact that with the way my brain works is I'm like totally into it, that I'm like happy tears, like, oh my God, it's so great. So, yeah.
Actually, I'm really glad you asked that, because before I speak, if I don't have a lovely bio that Steph created and that she read, what I ask that is said about me is that the most important thing I do every day is live unashamed, unafraid, undeterred as an openly autistic and neurodivergent person, so that I model that behavior for my sons. That's actually the most important thing in my life.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. Any other questions? How are we doing for time? Okay, we have 3 more minutes. We've got time for one more question if there's one burning.
Question for Isabella, or maybe the entire panel. So there's the labels autism and ADHD, but more recently there's been a term floating around called odd HD. Or how do you feel about the whole, typically we have two buckets, autism and ADHD, and now it's maybe the idea of a multi-dimensional spectrum for neurodivergency?
Yeah, thanks for your question. I mean, so there's a lot to unpack in your question. First of all, autism and ADHD currently are defined as two separate disorders or conditions under the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual 5. But many people have both. Previously, I think this goes all the way back to the DSM-3, they were the same condition. So a lot has changed basically from labeling, from clinicians changing simply the labels, right? And then there is also now how autism is defined as a spectrum. It has included a lot of people under this one umbrella that sometimes it's not necessarily the easiest fit. So a lot of research now is looking at the heterogeneity of autism and wondering kind of what's going on in there, because there's a lot of different, I'll kind of spare some of the details, but there's a lot of different genetics, right, links to things. There's intellectual disability that comes into it. There's people, a lot of times autism now is also multidimensional through symptoms based. So people have higher social challenges, but less sensory challenges. So, but another person might have higher sensory needs versus someone who, I don't know, has less restrictive behaviors, whatever, right? So right now, I would honestly say that there needs to be a little bit more clarity in these labels. I do agree with you. I'm not sure if that really answers your question. I could go on. It's a bit of a complicated question, yeah, but I guess right now odd ADHD is autism and ADHD, so for people who have both conditions as labeled currently.
I think what you're speaking to is exactly what you and Wanda were just, like we just talked about. Like, we need more nuance in the research. We need more nuance in the labels. The labels can be really empowering for a person who, takes that label and runs with it in a way that makes sense for them. You can also not have the label and still, there's tools that might work well for you, or you might reject the label because it has the baggage that it has had. Yeah, it's not the label that defines the person, it's how they show up in the world and figuring out how to make space for people to show up in the world the way they need to show up. Doing research that helps us break out that nuance and get excited about new ways of seeing how people show up in the world and have data.
Amazing. Anybody want to add anything, or probably good on time there? Amazing. Thank you so much to my panelists for those stories, for those concrete things that we can take for this conversation, to our question that took us out of productivity for a moment. So I'm glad you gave us a moment to reflect. I've certainly learned a lot here. I'm feeling very energetic, which is very exciting. Right? Yeah. From, starting by, getting to patterns and passion, right? Rwanda, so much in one word right there, and I'm grateful for it. To learning to suspend our judgment, to forgetting the box and picking the bigger bike, okay? And to learn to spend a great deal more time in front of the mirror. Thank you, Jen, for that. And, learning to dim the lights, so to speak, or building that ramp. And I like to think as soon as you're like, all right, building that ramp, like putting those things in place that you've been putting off, but you have no idea what that, ramp, what yellow brick road that ramp will lead to, right? And I want to thank you so much for sharing with us to believe and find your person, to find your resources, find your people, to fight to get into spaces, and to just get it done. Thank you so much to our panelists. Will you join me? Thank you, and Shrirar, to our wonderful host. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you, the AC.